Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC's May webinar. My name is Ryan Stewart and I am your host. I'm going to give folks a minute or so to log in. And while I do that, I would love to know a little bit about who is tuning in today. The format of these webinars is such that we can't see you. So I invite you to jump into the chat and add your name and where you're logging in from, any organization you're affiliated with, and maybe just add in there the sign that tells you that it's summer, that the season is shifted from spring to summer. What's that sign or event, or maybe it's a flower that you watch for to give you that indication. For me, I live on Vancouver Island in the Comox Valley. We've had full-on summer here, it feels like, for a couple weeks now. And earlier this week, it was warm enough for me to go for my first ocean dip of the year, which feels very, very early. And I think the next big milestone I'm watching for is getting out to the climbing crags and really feeling that summer heat emanating off the rock. I love the way the moss and the lichens smell when it's hot out, and there's kind of a very distinct smell like that. I'll add these questions to the chat for anyone that's just logging in and didn't catch all of that, and give you guys all a chance to log in. When you do, please make sure that you address it to everyone, not just the panelists and host, and then everybody gets to see. Yeah, love to hear where you're from and what you're watching for out there in the summer. While the rest of you weigh in, I'll let you know about today's webinar. We're going to learn about how to implement AI in outdoor recreation. We all hear how artificial intelligence can improve our operations, but there's definitely a skill to using it in an effective and efficient way, and any skill takes training. And so that's what we're going to learn about today, is some of those skills and the training that goes into using them effectively. We will be leaving time for questions. You can pop them in. There's a Q&A function on the Zoom screen here, as well as in the slideshow that we're going to be watching from our presenter. And you can pop them in at any time. We'll do our best to answer them along the way or at the end in a kind of dedicated Q&A session. I will also mention that we are recording. We will email you the recording along with takeaways and any additional resources or links that come up during the discussion. And we'll wrap things up around 1 p.m. Just looking at the chat here. If for addressing it to anyone in where it says to, you should be able to click on that little arrow there and change who you're addressing it to. So you can get it to everyone and not just the host and panelists. All right. Well, it looks like we've got folks logging in there. So I think I will fire things up. Just give me a second to share my screen and we'll get going. So hello again. My name is Ryan Stewart and I work on community engagement with the ORCBC. That includes organizing and hosting our webinars. Welcome to today's. We're talking about creating an AI roadmap, how to effectively integrate artificial intelligence into the operations of nonprofit clubs. But before we jump into that, a little bit of housekeeping. I want to start off by saying that I feel lucky to live, work, and recreate on the ancestral and traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. In the spirit of reconciliation, we've given a small donation to the Pupaikon Haunt Foundation. The foundation conducts native plant restoration work as public and Indigenous education, mostly in Gallon Harbor, or Gowland Todd Provincial Park near Victoria. Here is today's agenda. I'll provide a short introduction and then hand things over to our guest. If you have any questions during the presentation, there's going to be a Q&A button on your screen there. And also during the presentation, there'll be a separate one there that's a little more interactive. So I encourage you to use that one. We'll wrap things up around 1 p.m. Pacific time, and immediately following the webinar is a super short survey. Please stick around to fill it out. It's a great place to give us feedback about this webinar and let us know about any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. This webinar is part of a monthly series hosted by the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. The ORCBC represents more than 100 nonprofit organizations who in turn represent almost 200,000 British Columbians. There are snowmobilers and hunters, anglers and hikers, conservation organizations and mountain bike clubs. It's a very diverse group. What they share is a love for spending time in wild places. The Viora CBC is the only provincial organization that represents everyone whose passion is recreating in nature. We do this in many ways, including advocacy, capacity building, and education. And webinars like this one check several of those boxes all at the same time. So let's get started. Today we've got a guest is Brett Price. He's the founder of AIQ Group. Brett has a lot of experience helping organizations with digital adoption. His company develops AI training for small businesses, nonprofits, and community organizations. And its AI Learning Series is a self-paced program designed to develop AI concepts and apply them in a variety of industries and roles. And we're going to learn a lot more about that today. I'm going to stop sharing and hand things over to Brett. Brett, thanks so much for being here.
All right, I'm gonna fire up right now. Okay, looks like I'm sharing. You can see it okay, Ryan?
Can now? Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone, for spending your uh, lunch hour, I guess, for most of you with me today. We're going to talk about how to do more with less and how to use AI for outdoor recreation. But first, I'll give you a little bit about me just so you know who's actually talking. My name is Brett Price. I am the founding consultant with AIQ Consulting. My career started at UBC Business School in the early 90s and then continued on as a CPA with Ernst & Young Chartered Accountants back in the late 90s. At the time, Ernst & Young was changing their audit processes. This is a little bit boring at first, but you'll see where I'm going. Ernst & Young was changing their audit processes to transition from auditing individual transactions to being more focused on business processes. The idea was that if the business processes were sound and included proper controls, then the transactions would be accurate and complete. So the result is that I've earned my stripes, my career stripes, through a focus on business processes. This early training helped me start and run three successful small businesses, one of which is AIQ. AIQ has been around since 2008, focusing on business software integration. We renamed the agency to AIQ in early 2023 after ChatGPT launched in December 2022. Since then, I've spent thousands and thousands of hours working with AI to figure out how it works and how it can work for small, medium businesses. My personal background, on the other hand, is heavily rooted in outdoor recreation. I live and work out of Kimberley, BC. I was director of the Kimberley Trail Society for 9 years and president for 4 years. I've also done many consulting projects for outdoor services across the outdoor rec sector. Also, one of my other businesses is called Kazoom Cycling Apparel. I'm not sure if you've heard it or not, but I think some of you have. I saw some familiar names popping up. And we are also a member of Core Outdoors. So if there's any other Core members online out there today, use the emoticons, the emotion icons, and give a shout out to Core. So, although this presentation is about AI, it's equally about the importance, and maybe even more importantly, about the importance of business process and workflow in the age of AI. Primarily because your success in adopting it is going to depend on how well you've defined your workflow within the organization. It's everything. Okay, so the format today is AHA slides. You can see it. I'm going to just show a QR code. This is an interactive slide platform. And so, of course, you can just follow online, but I'd suggest you just take a moment, pull out your smartphones, and take a photo of the QR code on your screen and follow along it with your phone. Because there's going to be three voting slides, in which case we can interact. You can hit the question mark in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and ask a question, and we'll get to them later on. And you can put emotion icons throughout if you're surprised or happy with some of the content you see. All right, and then like Ryan mentioned, at the end we'll go over some of the questions. There we go. People are starting to use the emotions right now. We're going to go over some of the questions at the end of the presentation so that we keep the flow. Ryan, please interrupt me at any time if you see some questions pop up there with a question mark that may need to be answered. Okay, so let's go into the first thing, establishing the context and mindset. You'll see there's four parts to today's presentation. And the first one is context and mindset. Let's go right in with the first voting slide. All right. So if you haven't taken a photo of that QR code, please do so. And give me some indication about what your current comfort level is with AI tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. Have you used it before? Okay, it looks like most people have used it occasionally for work. There's some advanced users, and some people are just getting started, which is great. So you can see how these interactive slides works. It's kind of fun because you start to get an idea of who's there. And again, I encourage you to use the question mark to answer any questions as they come up, as the questions come up for you. All right, so looks like there's a bit of kind of a distribution across experience levels, with most people having some experience. All right, one more, second of three of these. What's the first word that comes to mind when you think of AI at work? So think about it. You're going to use AI at work. Is there a feeling that comes to you? And that might help me help you. Bad, perfect. Keep it simple. Scary, sycophantic, absolutely. So there's lots of, everything from good to bad to stressful. There's a lot of skepticism, it looks like, in the word cloud popping up. There's some environmental concerns that we're seeing pop up, very typical to what we're seeing in the news. AI is a big black box. We don't really know the way it's going to go. And so it's a presentation like today, which hopefully I'm not going to look to change anybody's mind, but I'll give you different perspectives of looking at things. And regardless, it's here. So this is the world we live in. And what do we do with it? All right. So, what is AI really? So, this is the follow-up slide to the last one. A lot of people are very concerned about what AI is. It's kind of terrifying because it seems like this overlord that's running in the background that's going to take over our lives and ruin our planet. And although I can't say for sure that it's not going to do that, I can say that it's more complex than you might think. What AI is it's actually just a pattern finder. There's no magic to it whatsoever. It uses vectors to identify and uh, different words as you put in a prompt, and it is effectively autocomplete on steroids. It doesn't actually know anything. It's finding patterns in the words you put and comparing it against its training database and everything else is out there. So although it's not infinitely intelligent, it's just pattern matching. Pattern matching is everything. Life is patterns. And AI is moving very fast towards more powerful reasoning models that are already fundamentally changing how we engage in the technology. For example, Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, and others are already working on computers that run on AI. So it's running on this pattern matching to help us understand our environment around us. I am certainly noticing that although things are getting obviously more powerful, I'm not really too concerned, at least at this stage, because there's still a lot of mistakes happening. And those mistakes are going to be addressing those mistakes are going to be part of this presentation. In fact, the direction that we're probably heading or seem to be heading is that instead of one all-powerful AI, we're probably going to have a whole bunch of small AIs that are very limited in their abilities, and that over time, those limited ability AIs might be roped together or orchestrated to give us more powerful AI. But we certainly aren't seeing any AI that is good at everything all at once and also accurate at the same time. Notwithstanding, it's incredibly powerful and it's going to change the way we all work, and we don't really have a choice. It's here. What you'll see probably coming forward is you're going to start to see headless software. And so I'm not sure if any of you heard of that concept before, but it's software without user interface. So where there's databases in the background and our prompts allow us to access that information. and do everything that we would do in software without actually seeing it. If you've ever heard of OpenClaw, that came out, whatever, a couple months ago, and everyone was panicking because the AIs were interacting with each other. And basically, OpenClaw allows AI to access tools, which would be your devices, for instance, your credit cards, your payment, and things like that, and work on your local device while accessing the internet and the larger models. And so you can expect to see headless software in the relatively near future. Um, a concept of this co-pilot versus not autopilot is going to be a thing that I'm going to be addressing out throughout the entire presentation. Because of this inaccuracy of AI, you have to be really diligent to take on a mindset which is helping to manage the AI and not just letting it run itself. So, how do you get started? There are currently two sort of main methods on how you access AI. The first is you go into ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or whatever you like, Claude, and you go straight into the bot and you just start asking it questions. And the second method is by using AI within another software you already use. And so that could be a CRM software, it could be an ERP software, it could be a website platform, project management software, and there will be some AI, which is from one of the frontier models like ChatGPT or Claude, and it will access it in the background and give, if it's a project management software, that AI would give Claude or OpenAI access to your project management software or your accounting software or your CRM software. So it's either direct or through a third-party software. In all cases, it's critically important that you always use paid plans for organizational work, especially if you're just using it on your own personal. Well, I'd be careful there as well. But paid plans mean that you're not the product. If it's free and you're wondering, oh, look, I get this great software for free, it's because you're the product. And so when you pay, paid versions are more private. So in the case of a project management software, you're only giving it access to that project management work if it's and you can also in let's say a regular ChatGPT situation where you're using a paid version, it's interacting with you, but it's not putting your data, or at least they say they're not. I guess we won't know for sure, but the claims are that if you pay for it, your interactions are not going toward the training of the models themselves. So privacy is one of the big ones. I don't remember seeing it on the word cloud, but never use free AI with proprietary or personal information. And I'd suggest you keep personal identifiable information off all AI, period. Okay. All right. The supervisor mindset I mentioned 2 slides ago, which is AI is not perfect. It's not even close to perfect yet. It still makes a lot of mistakes despite getting quite powerful. And so the supervisor mindset, which just means a human in the loop, is going to be critical as you roll it out into your organizations or you use it for work. So while there's a quietly brewing industrial revolution that's happening, we're just not there yet. And until we see the quality of AI go to perfect, which I don't see anywhere close to us getting there just yet, it's very important to keep a close overview on all of the work that it's doing and don't give it access to your credit card, for example. Treat it like a genius student that has access to, you know, let's say all of, if you're using BC Trail Standards or Whistler Trail Standards, or you're using the Land and Range Practices Act or something like that, AI is going to have access to all of that information and know it all like the back of its hand, but it's not going to know how to use it very well. So it's very important that you always watch it carefully. You never just copy and paste an answer it gives you without checking it very carefully before sending it. Okay, so that's the context and mindset that we're going into. Now let's get into a bit more of the specifics on why AI matters in the outdoor rec sector. There's a capacity gap in this industry as well as most industries. And I can certainly attest that with working for almost a decade as being an active director within the Kimberley Trail Society, I'm well aware of this capacity gap. You're asked to do more and more, and things are getting more complex seemingly by the year, which is creating this gap between what your ability to deliver is and what you're expected to deliver. And so, although many of us may wish that AI was never invented, I'm kind of one of them, to be honest. I was quite happy in the 80s. It's here, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it's better to embrace the software and the technology and learn about it rather than to, sort of just close your eyes and wish it wasn't there. There's a funny story that when I was working at Ernst& Young a decade ago, or well, decade ago, in the early 90s, I guess, or mid 90s, when just as email was coming on board, the librarian of Ernst& Young said she had it written into her contract that she didn't have to use the internet because she disagreed with it fundamentally. And although that's her opinion and she can do what she wants, it's certainly not a winning strategy because the technology continues whether we like it or not, and probably the best offense is a good defense, so to speak, and learning about it and then learning where the risks actually are. In this case, there's going to be a lot of benefits to using it, bridging the capacity gap is a big one. Whether it's volunteer strain or the complexity of the jobs you do, AI is an absolute wizard at certain things, and knowing what it's good at and what it's not good at is going to be a key part of you using it effectively within your organization. So, how do you bridge the capacity gap, or what is the actual opportunity? Well, AI has been around for almost 60 years. If you think of spam filters, IBM's Deep Blue, and it beat Gary Kasparov in chess, and well, I don't know when that was, but 40 years ago or something like that. And then certainly recommendation algorithms that are on the internet everywhere on recommending what we should buy or watch. That's all AI. And the new AI is just an advancement in the exact same capacity and that pattern matching that we addressed earlier. AI dramatically reduces the time required to execute tasks that are routine, rules-based, and repetitive. And we call those the three R's of AI for workflow. And if you have things that are routine, rules-based, and repetitive, you're going to get great results. And there's actually more of those than you think in what you do every day. And those are the types of tasks that we're looking to move off to AI. Embracing AI to do the most tedious of jobs will allow you to focus on your work. And it will allow it to focus on the mundane work, allowing you to focus on the work that requires lived experience. And it's also the more fun part of your job, most likely. Going beyond the chatbot, we're moving into an age of agentic AI. You may have heard that word, and that's where AI is not just talking to you, it's actually doing things for you. And we're going to see a lot of big advancements in 2026. It exists now. It's not widely used now, in large part because it's making a lot of mistakes. But the large corporations are figuring out how to limit it and automate things so that it will do work overnight, for instance, and get whether it's code written or stores remerchandised or whatever. It is being used now.
Right.
Agent, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question, and I think it's kind of touched on a couple of the pages that you've covered in the last few minutes. But one thing I know that we talked about at the Outdoor Rec Council internally was the idea of kind of ethical guidelines. So you talked on the privacy aspect of it. Is there a way of thinking of the ethical aspects of it too, of what work should we do ourselves versus what work we should be thinking about farming out? And can you talk a little bit about that and how you think about that?
Well, transparency is one of the major ones, which is we wouldn't we wouldn't think twice about using autocorrect in our emails. We've been using it, and that's why I mentioned that AI has been around for a long time. It's crept into our lives, and this is really no different. If you're using AI to do something that somebody you're interacting with is expecting that you did, then that's a good example that you shouldn't be using it. Whereas if it's sort of a sidebar to what you do, then we're less concerned. So if I'm writing an email to you, Ryan, and it continues my sentences, I don't think anyone would say that I have to tell you, oh, I used autocorrect or spell check in something. So I think we think that's okay. But let's say you're going to buy a song or some creative off of me, especially if it was creative that was being purchased because it was unique and you're purchasing a unique copy of that. Or if I'm like a recording artist would be an example. If I'm not being transparent in how I used AI, then that's a good, that's going to be a problem. So use be transparent in how you use it. AI use policies are something that you're seeing people use for not only internal, but also they're putting that on their website so that people understand when are you using AI. And so I would say that as long as you're being transparent in how you're using it, then you're off to a good start. And from there, there's going to be people who, I know when it first came out a couple of years ago, people were saying, oh, you got to tell when you use AI all the time. And you don't see a lot of that in day to day where people are, putting a caveat at the end of their email saying, oh, I used email to, or AI to help me with this email. So there's quite a bit of judgment is involved, but lean to transparency and think if what you're providing to somebody is meant to be a unique offering from yourself, or whether it's augmenting or assisting, but really you're providing your information. And that might be a guideline. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thanks. That's super helpful. Continue.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, no, not sorry. Yeah, I'd love the interruptions because it gives me something to think about, and hopefully I'm guaranteed there's other people who have the same questions as well. So when we move to agentic AI, you bring the ability to perform multi-step roles, and this is where the results are getting much better. The prompt, as we're going to get into shortly, the prompt is when you engage with AI and you ask it a question. Most people aren't very good at prompting. They're in a hurry and they just hope that AI gives them a good result. With agents, you can create back-end instructions to teach the AI all of the things that you should be including in your prompt. So as they become more powerful, because users are learning how to more carefully define AI's role and grounding the data. And grounding the data means that you're telling the AI exactly which data it should use. So if you have a specific request, it's not going off to the internet and finding somewhat of irrelevant data and adding that into your answer. It's grounded to specific data. And that's why when you're using third-party apps, AI within third-party apps, the results are actually often much better because the AI has already been trained in the background to say, only use the information that's in this person's CRM or within this ERP or within this project management software. So having these agents are an example of how we're limiting the AI to certain tasks and very tight roles. If you think of your organizational chart, maybe there's an executive director and a bunch of volunteers. You could say, well, the executive director is kind of does everything in small organizations, but really they have a variety of roles of which they're doing all of the roles. And so you can create a specific AI agent for each of your roles, whether that's social media or, maybe not AHR, because that's an example of something where, there's going to be a lot of personal identifiable information, but let's say analyzing trail usage, or analytics. And so you can find out what are all of the roles that I have within this organization, and you would create a different agent for each of those roles. I, for instance, probably have about 50 different agents that I've built for myself. And each of those agents has a very specific um, role. It's got multi-step reasoning, which I'm saying you have to do, approach all questions in this order. And you must use this data to answer those questions. And so that's what I meant by starting this presentation off and saying that although AI is definitely getting more powerful, the way people are using it is actually the more powerful aspect of it in making them more narrow and giving them very specific instructions and data on how they should interact. Um, as you use the agents, of course, and they get more powerful, it's really super important to make sure you have that AI use policy, which we're going to get to in a moment, and the human in the loop concept that I've already mentioned. Some realities to remember, and this goes back to the fact that the AI is just a pattern matching. It is not actually this all-knowing software. It's just patterns. So AI is excellent at summarizing, but it's poor at nuance. Large language models, which is what the current AIs that we're all using, or most of us are using, are linguistic. They're not logical. So if you ask it for a bunch of math questions, it struggles. If you ask it for certain hyperlinks, Perplexity is an example of an AI that works really well because it's been trained with hyperlinks and use of the internet. It's a kind of a AI for the internet, so to speak. And there are Wolfram Alpha and some other ones that are trained in math, but most LLMs are not very good at math. It's going to hallucinate, really confidently. You've all probably heard of the lawyer who cited fake cases and the judge called them out on them. You have to have that human in the loop. Otherwise, you're going to have garbage in, garbage out. The AI plus tools equals agents. And so this plus tools, that's the open claw concept that some of you might have heard about, where you give an AI that lives on your device or within your computer access to all of this, the mouse controls, for instance, and everything that you would use on your computer. It has access to your computer as a tool and not just the learning, which is the large language model. Amongst all of it, privacy is paramount. So never ever upload personally identifiable information. If you have a report that has PII in it and you would love for it to do an analysis on it, let's say it's a member poll. The polls are great. A lot of the probably participants on the call today are doing lots of polls all the time to get feedback from the community on the roles that their organization is playing within that community. And so there's going to be personal identifiable information on that. So what you might do is you might codify if a person's name and email is in there, you would put a code in there and you would maybe delete the email and just put first initial, last initial in the first column, which is the name, so that the AI is never actually getting that name. And then you can, after it gives the answer, then if you needed the names, well, then you could, paste the proper information back in. But that would be an example of anonymizing personally identifiable information. And if you can do that, you're going to get amazing results without compromising somebody else's privacy. Even things like the way you mentioned, Ryan, at the start of this, that this call is being recorded. Recording the call is an amazing a way to save time. If you did every meeting within your organization and you recorded it with notes, it means that it's going to take an hour worth of talking and it's going to boil it down into action items and notes for your meeting. So you don't have to type the notes out later or something like that. Incredibly, time saving. But you have to let everybody on the call know that it's being recorded, or that's a problem.
Brett.
Be aware of bias as well, that because is training data for all of these models, there could be a US centric bias. There could be a bias towards who knows what, because we don't have access to exactly how these things were trained. But the internet is filled with bias. And so those biases will come through unless you've grounded your information in certain knowledge and database. And in this case, it might be, let's say, BC trail standards. Otherwise, you might find, trail standards for Germany it might be used, or who knows? Probably the US because it's the biggest economy. All right, so we'll move to the next page now.
Brett,
Yeah.
just before you do, we've got a question over here. Just wondering if you could just take a step back and tell us a little bit about how to make an agent. So just a
Okay.
little further back down the road before we
Yeah.
get moving forward again.
So whenever you go into a paid version of ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of them, a paid version will not only give you that privacy that we're looking for, but you'll have the ability to make a custom GPT in case of ChatGPT, or a Gemini Gem in case of Google Gemini are examples. When you create it, it'll ask you for certain things. It'll ask you for the name of the agent. In this case, it could be sales and marketing agent. Then it'll ask you for the instructions, and then it'll ask you for the data that it can use. And there may be another question or two in there as far as who can access it, etc. But basically, it's the who is this agent? Like, what is it for? What is it supposed to do? What information can it access? And that's kind of the who, what, when, where, why, how is there's actually only three areas for information, but it's starting to under the instructions is the when I'm developing agents for clients, in the instructions, I use a who, what, when, where, why, how approach, um, to tell the agent exactly, how it should come to its decisions, what data should be used, when would it take actions in the case of autonomous agents. So when a lead changes to a contact in your CRM, there's a status change in data. And so that might be a trigger for it to then take action and email somebody, for instance, or do whatever. And so those five W's that we've known as good analysis, the five W's in analysis, if you use that within your um, instructions, you're going to get much better results. And a good trick is actually to get an AI query. If you're making, let's say, a sales and marketing agent, you can get an agent. Go into just a normal AI query and say, I'm looking to make a sales and marketing agent for my whatever type of organization. Um, Create the instructions for me for it. It should be blah, blah, blah. And you just kind of blah, blah, blah in the prompt, but it's going to then make very specific instructions that you can then copy and paste into the instructions part in that agent. And it's that super detailed, precise method, which is called markdown language, which looks like normal English. There's no code really on it. Sometimes it uses hashtags, but it's very, very specific. And if you use that, you've now had the output of one AI query giving you the input for another AI, in this case, an agent. And so that's a way to sort of give that chain results to improve, the performance of things. And that chain of thought where I've got on the screen here, where it's like upload, reasoning, action, tool use, whatever, it helps it helps the agent understand that step that it must take, the multi-step reasoning or chain of thought. So hopefully that helps, but go in there and play around and just know that you name the agent, you tell it the role it's going to be, and then you give it the instructions, and then you tell the data it's allowed to use. And you'll be able to upload data and it just as a file. Sometimes you'll be able to give it access to a folder within OneDrive, for example. Other people, you could try using Google Notebook LM, which is an incredibly well-grounded AI. It uses Gemini, but it's a Google product. And it only uses the information you've given it access to. So that could be documents, it could be drive folders, it could be certain website URLs that you like. Look, for instance, Whistler Trail Standards or Forest and Ranges Practice Act. If you gave those particular URLs to the agent, it's only going to use that information to come up with its results. And so you could have a trail expert, for instance.
And so, like my understanding, a big part of that, I use Notebook LM all the time for writing articles, and I take all of the notes that I have and the websites that I've looked at and all the research I've done. I put it all in there, and then I can actually talk to and it kind of talks back to me, and you can make video. I mean, it's amazing, really fun tool, but also really helpful for just querying that information in a very contained way. And I think, the way I think about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that like an agent or the notebook that you create, it's like a personalized AI that just means I don't have to go back in every time I want to use it for the same purpose. Like it's saving me time because I've already sort of prompted or primed it with this is what you're going to do for me. So I don't have to put in as much information to get it to do what I want. Is that a good way of thinking about it?
100%. Yeah, you explained it perfectly. So there's a few ways that concept that you just mentioned, which is the results you get out of an AI is going to be based on, is the garbage in, garbage out. So if you give it great reasoning and great instructions and a tight database that it can work with versus giving it access to the whole internet, you're going to get better results. If I just use a normal ChatGPT query, let's say it's about building a house, and I keep going back to that same query rather than starting a new query every time I have a new question about the house. It's going to start to become an expert on my house, and it's not going to have to ask me any questions. It's already going to know the context. And so that's within just a thread. You want to keep going back to the same threads. An agent is one step better than that, where you're actually giving it back-end instructions, guardrails, and a role. You're right, you can just keep going back to that agent, and it knows that it's a sales and marketing agent for your organization already. You don't have to keep telling it because you put that in the back end. Google Notebook LM is another version of that, which is effectively it's an agent, but it's not called an agent. It's a piece of software that does exactly what you said. You can create different notebooks, and each notebook will retain the questions and the sources that you gave it so that you don't have to keep doing it. You just keep going back. So each role within your organization will have these separate agents that you just keep going back to redefine. In your Notebook LM example, you can actually, now that you have such a tight, because Notebook LM does not go outside of its parameters, it's really locked in there. You could actually add a notebook as a source for a Gemini, a Google Gemini Gem, which is a custom agent within the Gemini platform, Google Gemini platform. You could use one of your notebooks as the source. So that's a way so you get hundreds of URLs and documents and reports and audio and video and everything in there. And it's grounded in that information. So that's key.
Awesome.
All
Thanks.
right. Next level, workflow map. As we talked about, the justification. Now we're going to get into workflow mapping. Again, workflow mapping is business processes, and that is going to be the key link to custom agents. Every workflow or common workflows should each have their own agents, rather than using the generic chatbot or ChatGPT, which is internet wide and all knowing, or in quotes. It's not going to be as accurate because it has too much information. Okay, so first, when you're getting started, strategy must precede implementation. Jumping right into AI is like building a complicated piece of IKEA furniture without looking at the instructions. You might get it built, but you're going to take a long, hard road to get there, and you're probably going to have pieces left over. So rethinking your workflows with AI in mind, understanding that we're now in this AI world, we've got to rethink the way we do things instead of just trying to bolt on AI to our existing processes. We need to remember that supervisor mindset and retask humans to the higher order tasks that require lived experience with a higher EQ component versus IQ. AI is great for the IQ stuff, but the EQ stuff is always going to be for the humans to do. So, on that note, which administrative task drains the most time in your day? So, again, I'm going to pop up if you lost the code, take a photo of the code and give some examples. These are just some examples off the top of my head. So, you might want to be drafting grant applications and funding reports. AI is amazing at that. It can not only find potential grantors for your organization. If you just get to do a search, you could have an agent called, Grant Finder or something, and it would scour the internet for new grants that come up and give you suggestions. You could then upload their grant requirements. And then if you are successful in getting that grant, that same bot or that same thread even, but I recommend a bot, would then make sure that all of your tasks and everything you're doing are in line with the grant. So now you have this grant expert bot or, custom agent where you can ask it all kinds of questions. Oh, we want to use the money for this. And the bot will say, oh, actually, you can't. It says you have very specific grant requirements and you can't do this. So you just fill it full of information and being mindful of personal identifiable information and proprietary information. As long as you're using a paid version, the proprietary, I'm less concerned about because, for example, if you're using a Gemini Gem or let's say Copilot in Microsoft, it's got the same sort of moat around it that it would if you stored documents in OneDrive. So if you're comfortable storing documents in OneDrive, it's the same moat that they've got for Copilot in Microsoft 365 or for Google Workspace, it's Gemini, but it's the same as if you're using Google Drive. It's got those same protections. All right, so we're seeing social media content is a big one. When you're using social media content and bots to help you out with that, make sure you watch for the dashes. For some reason, AI loves to put dashes everywhere. That's a dead giveaway that you're using AI to write it. People may not be concerned. I see it all over social media where people are just obviously copying and pasting. So, it's a great way to reduce your load by using it for social media and newsletter content. You got some volunteer schedules, maintenance, that's analysis. It's amazing at that. Summarizing land use referrals, super complicated stuff. AI churns through that with really, really high reliability, especially if you have a custom agent that is tasked and only gets access to your land use referral and maybe a few other things. A Google Notebook LM would be amazing for that. You give it the URLs, upload a few documents, it's going to give you amazing, accurate responses. Saves hours of your day.
Brett, when it comes to social media and the newsletters, a lot of organizations, they have kind of a brand, a personality that they cultivate. Is it part of the prompting that you can kind of create or ensure that the social media that the agents are creating are kind of following that same personality?
Great question. What you can do is you can upload past examples of things you've done. So if you have a whole bunch of newsletters that you've done in the past, just export them as PDFs, copy and paste them, do whatever, and create one document, which is, your tone. It's called a tone document or something like that. And then you upload it, and that's your organizational tone or your personal tone if it's for personal use. And then it will follow a like scary level and following the way you write. And so it's a great way to keep that brand image consistent.
Okay.
We talked about ethical use and privacy already. Because policy's got to precede implementation, AI use policy has to be the where you start. You have to assemble the key stakeholders and classify your data. What are we going to allow AI to see? Green light it, yellow light it, or yellow lit, red lit. Personal PII, never. Don't put it in, even if it's a paid version. If it's internal documentation, again, it's going to get the same kind of privacy protection that OneDrive or Google Drive already provides, as long as you're in a paid version. Yellow lit. You can give it access to that, but be careful. And greenlit any public stuff. So if you're putting URLs in there or, the Forest and Range Practices Act, you're using that for some of your work, who cares? Put that in there. It's already available on the internet anyways. Definitely make sure that you have human in the loop by a qualified person. You could have require sign-offs at the bottom of any AI generated content or AI augmented content. Require somebody to sign off on it. That way you know that anyone who's within your organization is using it has checked it because they signed off on it. Next, after you've got the AI use policy, you get into the milestones, tasks, and owners. So in consulting, we consider organizations like big projects or a bunch of little projects. So every organization has the roles that we discussed earlier. A role of what you do, or a role of a person, for instance, has just a whole bunch of tasks that recur every daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. They have task owners and they have goals that they're trying to meet. And so it's really like managing a project. And that's all organizations are. It's just projects on repeat. And so the concept with if you can define your organization in terms of one big project, you've got, 10 roles in your organization. Each role is a project. There's 5 milestones or deliverables for each of those roles. And there's a whole bunch of tasks and subtasks, probably a budget that's related to each of those tasks. You probably have documents or folders that are also related to that, whether it's a social media or applying for grants or whatever. If you can get that project management document to represent your organization, you're in a very good position because you can start to allocate it saying this is an AI task, this is a human task, this is an AI task, human task, etc. And then because we know who's supposed to do it, we've documented the exact task and the nature. We've put in the project plan the information that it's going to be using, which is the where, that's the database side of things. When is it going to be? The grant is due on this date and the reports are due on this date. The why, what is the logic within the workflow? Why are we doing this? If you have that documented in a project style plan, you can basically just upload that to the AI and it has all of the information it needs to give great results. And I would probably say upload it to an AI and then say create a markdown instruction. So markdown language is the human precise instructions that you can get AI to make for your bot. If it's a grant bot, you would give it the project plan for the grant process. You'd say, this is what we do. We look for grants everywhere, find grants that are similar or will fund the types of projects that we have on the go for this year. You figure out all the tasks that need to be done to execute. And the bot's going to tell you which of those tasks are in alignment with the grant or not in alignment. And then you just say, make the instructions, copy and paste those instructions into the bot. And now you've got a turbocharged, super specific agent to help you out.
Brett, could you give an example or like a case study of like a project and just pick something that might apply and like how you would think about each of those steps, really, just briefly?
Well, I think probably grant is a good one. And so you define the project, that might be, let's figure out, we know things that we have to do. Let's say it's a trail system. We want to build out a series of maybe a whole network or just a couple of trails that we'd like to build. And so that's going to, how do you build a trail? Well, you got to go to tender and find some trail builders or do it internally. You're going to have to figure out what the budget for it is, how many kilometers, what kind of terrain it's like. So it's going to be terrain assessment. Then you're going to have a bunch of government things. Just file Section 57 with Rex Sites and Trails BC. You might have to do community outreach. You might have to contact local government to get their approval, depending on whose land it is, or contact the landowner. So those are all the tasks. You itemize that in a project plan. You put the budget in, who's responsible for all those things. Then what I would do is I'd go into Gemini or Copilot. I'd create a custom thing called, you know, red trail number 4, which is the new trail, expert. That's what it would be called. I would get an AI I'd tell them all about it. I might just verbally tell them everything I know about it. And then I'd say create instructions for this new bot that I'm creating. It would pump out very specific instructions that just kind of goes over everything I just said. It would probably also add its own points in there that I might have missed. Oh, don't forget to, you know, fundraise or, get local buy-in or whatever. And then I would have those instructions and I'd copy that into the bot. Then I would find the next step would be to find a funder for it. So I would get the bot to search for available grants that my tasks that I've identified for this new trail would so that it would fund it. No, it's found a series of grants that would fund that type of work. Great. I go to the website. Okay, I download the grant package. I would get the bot to, the bot. I'd also probably give it background on our organization. Then I would get it to do the application. Then I'd have to copy and paste it into this specific grant form. I'd review it carefully to make sure that I 100% agree with the answers to all questions, such that, I would have written that, for instance. I'm now comfortable with it. I would submit the grant on time. If I get the grant, I would say, okay, the grant's got 3 report dates on it. And I would be consulting and talking with the bot or the agent constantly throughout the entire process to make sure that we're not missing any deadlines according to the project plan, which I've already uploaded into the agent, that I'm not missing any critical reporting or whatever that I have to provide to the grantor. And then let's say I do another trail. I might just clone that bot, but it's a different thing. Now it's a different project called re-signing of our entire trail network. And so I might use the same bot twice and then just change some of the things, or maybe I'll create a new bot for the sign project, which is improving signage across, across the entire trail network. So hopefully that helps. But again,
Yeah.
it's the idea of getting your house in order first, because until that's in order, the AI is going to give you garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Next, the 3R approach. So on those tasks, we have to go through and in that project plan, we have to say, are these repetitive? Are they high frequency tasks, kind of clerical in nature? Are they rules based? Are they logic heavy? If this, then that. And that would be an example of comparing a proposal against grant criteria. Is it routine? Is it a low EQ task that doesn't, if it's about, communicating with the government because the local government is actually really anti this trail network, well, maybe I wouldn't do that. I'd use that as a personal thing that I would go and talk to the mayor and the council about the project plan rather than just getting AI to, create an email and send it off without me looking because it won't have that personal touch. And so it's all about finding the right tasks. Next, you got to ground your data, as we've talked about. It's this idea of a data moat, making sure that we use either Google Notebook LM or we've only given it two folders within Microsoft 365 that it's allowed to look at. And I'm uploading all of the important project documents, including the grant documents and Whistler Trail standards and et cetera, all get dumped into this Microsoft 365 what like OneDrive folder, so that it's only pulling information from there. That grounded data is really important to get good results out. Creating better prompts. So even though we have an agent that's been given good instructions, you still want to do very clear prompts. If you think of the AI as being a junior, a hyper intelligent genius of a summer student, but they've never been into the trail systems before or anything like that, you'd have to give them very clear instructions or you're not going to get good results. I'm going to just pick it up a little bit here. I'm going to make this entire presentation and a summary of the presentation available. And I'll give you a link at the end, but I got to move through here because we're running out of time. Finally, you build the assistance. We've talked about that. Um, what we didn't mention is the feedback loop. So even though you've given it the name, you've selected the platform, you've given it a name and instructions, and you might, get the AI to help with your instructions, as I mentioned earlier. You upload the knowledge base or you give it access to grounded data. Then look at what are the results like? Are you getting the results you want or not? If you're not, that feedback loop, you got to update the instructions or improve the knowledge database. If you have garbage, old, outdated knowledge in your database, you're going to get bad results. All right. The use cases, policy interpretation, report standardizing, grant matching, making sure that you're getting the right grant for the right projects, data trend analysis, data summary, correspondence. These are all amazing high IQ efforts that AI is amazing at. So that kind of finishes up where we're getting to. And the takeaway is 6 items to remember. The most important things of what we talked about today is the supervisor mindset, making sure that humans move from doing to managing, and don't be short with that. You have to check it. Create the AI use policy to determine how is your organization allowed to work with AI. And that's everything from the ethical side of things through to, the green lit, yellow lit, red lit data, workflow mapping. You need to know what you want to do like super specifically, because if you don't know it, the AI is not going to know it. Make sure the tasks are according to the 3R filter, that they're appropriate for an AI versus a high EQ, which might be having that all important discussion with one of your staff or whatever, that there's maybe issues. Grounded data, and then prompt precision. So that's it. There's this presentation as well as a summary of this presentation will be available at aiqgroup.ca/ORCBC. If you want to try something to do, go to that URL, create an AI use policy. You can get AI to help. Try to get your workflow into a project format, kind of project plan style format and look at the three R's to see which processes, what are the things that cost the most money or take the most time that are very appropriate within your organization, and then run that pilot, see how it works. If you'd like to train your organization, we're giving you 50% off on all the courses. That's ORCBC 90 day, and that code is also at the aiqgroup.ca/ORCBC URL. And then you can either take the AI Fundamentals course 1.0, which is actually free anyways, or any of the other courses, you can get 50% off using that code. The courses are academic in nature. They're not a video where you can just sit back with a coffee and just, have some 25-year-old with, fancy, VR skills to take you through things. This is the heavy lifting about how things you should think about and how you should use them within your organization. So hopefully that'll help. We've only got a couple of minutes. Is there any other questions in there that you found, Ryan, that we haven't addressed yet?
The big one I've seen a few times is, do you have any tools or recommendations of which AI to use for what processes? Like, I think you started off talking about how some of them are better at some things, and I've heard that before. Are there any that you're like, oh yeah, for this task I use this, for that task I use that, or is it
No,
really
don't
more about the
bother.
agent? Yeah.
Code, if you're in coding, if you're a computer person, use Claude Code. It's a little bit better, but not that much better, like slightly better. Other than that, you should use the one that's associated with a platform that you work on a daily basis. If you're a Google user, use Google Gems. If you're a Microsoft user, use Copilot. And both of those two platforms, Microsoft or Google, they give you the easy access to where your data is already stored, which is in OneDrive or in Google Drive. And then you just get the plan that includes the ability to create the custom bots, which is usually just one level up. It's not too expensive. You might be paying an extra $20 a month per user, but it's the best $20 you're ever going to spend. It really is. And it will take you some time. You're not going to become an expert overnight, but start using it. It's amazing. And like I say, take the courses if you want to know any more about the background. And there's about 8 courses now, and there's more rolling out every month.
All right. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Lots of great comments in the chat there about the value of this webinar so far. So thank you, Brett. I'm just going to take over your screen here and just shut down the webinar for everybody. Again, thank you, Brett, for sharing all your knowledge with us and for the super generous offer for everyone. I hope you take it up. I definitely find that, the academic nature of your course is probably a big way of actually putting these skills into a way that making them really useful for yourself versus, like you said, watching a video and then trying to process that into something. This is a lot more hands-on. I think definitely helps. We're out of time. I appreciate everybody coming in and taking part and asking great questions and being part of it, being interactive. I think it makes it that much more valuable. This webinar is part of a series that we do every month. The next one is June 2nd to coincide with BC Trails Day, and we're going to have the BC Mountaineering Club here to tell us about their project up at Water Sprite Trail and Hut. It was super successful, but maybe almost over successful. There was a lot of interest in it and how they responded to that heavy usage. I think it's a lot of lessons for anyone that manages trails, builds trails, manages users. I think you'll find a lot of value in that webinar. To find out about it and everything else the Outdoor Recreation Council does, subscribe to our newsletter. You can find it at orcbc.ca. And finally, stick around for the survey. It'll load right as soon as I stop talking in your web browser. I think with that, I'll say good afternoon. Thanks again to Brett. Thanks again to everybody else, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.